In today's world, it's very important that you understand how the world sees you. There's a lot of different tests out to determine who you are, your personality style, but what's even more important is how that world out there that you're dealing with is going to see you. And hey, there's a book out that I've just read that I really like. It's called How the World Sees You by Sally Hogshead, and you're in for a treat right now because I've got her online right now from her offices in Orlando, Florida, to share with us some ideas about the book. Sally, thanks so much for being with us today.
Terry, what an honor. I'm excited to be able to be here and talk to you about this today.
Yeah, this is great. I love it because I've been watching your book, and of course, you and I know each other from the National Speakers Association, where we both are working, we're writing and different things. And I love what you've done with this book. Now, I read your first book about Fascinate. It was really good. I thought, wow, that's got to be one of the greatest. But no, you came along and did even better with this one. Really good. And it's already bestseller on New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. And so what I did, Sally, is I went through the book, and I read it actually a couple of times. Went through and I took some notes. Look at this. Matter of fact, Sally, are you impressed? I got all these yellow markers in there like that, and you see here we're getting down to serious stuff. I take the jacket off, I got the book like this ready to go, and if it's all right with you, Sally, what I want to do is just go through and cite a couple of things so that those that are watching will realize what a powerful book this is and how much it can help them not only in their business to generate more revenue, but also to connect with people, and just kind of get your thoughts on that. Would that be all right with you, Sally?
I would love that, Terry. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, here we are. I'm going to bounce over here because as I went through this, I loved what you said here. Like, I'm right here. You say, where it begins, you unlearn boring. That's something you've stressed in Fascinate and in what you do here. And to unlearn boring, it sounds intriguing. Tell us what you mean by that and how that can really help us in business.
Every time you communicate, you're doing one of two things. You're either adding value or you're taking up space. And when you add value, in other words, when you create messages that attract people, that give them something they didn't have before, that add insight, that help them do better in their work or in their life, people want to listen to you. This is when you're at your most fascinating. You're creating relationships. You are captivating your listener. But if you're not fascinating people, in other words, if you're not adding value, then you're just taking up space. And if you're taking up space, then people don't want to listen to you. They start to block you out. They start to ignore you. They don't answer your calls. They don't respond to your emails. In meetings, they don't take what you say seriously. This is when you're boring. When you're boring, you're not adding value. When you're saying things, when you have messages, communication that really contributes to other people, this is when you're at your most fascinating. So the problem is that we feel as though when we're asking for somebody's attention, that we feel put on the spot, we feel inhibited, and this is when we start to go over here to the land of boring. You don't have to learn how to be fascinating. You're already fascinating. You already have these qualities. But over time, you learn boring. And so in this book, I show you how do you take those qualities that are most fascinating, most valuable, and focus on those so you can stop just taking up space and boring your listener.
Yeah, and I think that's particularly important today. Tell me what your thoughts are on this, but it seems like with today, one of the real problems we have as marketers, as communicators, is there's so many people giving out lots of information, and I'm not talking about spam. I'm talking about really good content. Many people say, wow, I've got all these email lists that I've subscribed to, and they're all really good, but I just don't have the time for that. When we're boring, it makes it really difficult. People go, I don't need that, I don't need that, and eventually they don't need you. How do you make sure you can stand out and be someone that they go, whoa, this person is the opposite of boring?
Well, the first thing you need to know is, how does the world see you at your best? In other words, what do people really value within your natural personality? On the cover of the book, you might have noticed, Terry, see there's a mirror here. And the reason why I put a mirror here is because I want you to be able to see how the world sees you at your best. In other words, what are those qualities that make people want to hire you, work with you, believe you, champion for you, evangelize for you? There are certain qualities within your personality that if you could see yourself the way other people see you at your best, it would make it so much easier because you could just focus on what you're already doing right. So instead of trying to be all things to all people, you could focus on who are you at your best so that you can communicate using that over and over. And I found that this is what high performers do. In my research with 300,000 professionals all around the world in companies like AT&T and GE and Cisco, I found that the high performers understand the way in which they are most likely to add distinct value with some kind of signature benefit. And it's these patterns within our communication that drive whether or not other people want to work with us and partner with us and befriend us and fall in love with us. but there's a science behind it, and you can deconstruct it. And that's what I do inside the book, How the World Sees You.
Excellent. I love that. I had not noticed that over here on the jacket, the mirror, but sure enough, it is, and I think that's so appropriate. That too often we want to think the world sees us as we think they see us, but that's not the way to do it. And I love the steps you go through. Like here, when I'm looking on page 13 here, you talk about unlearning boring. This book will not change who you are. Quite the opposite. This book will help you become more of who you are. What do you mean by that?
You don't have to change who you are to become successful. There's this idea that we need to somehow change or fix something. And what I found in my research is that high performers don't try to change. They don't try to become something they're not. They don't try to focus on their so-called weaknesses. Instead, they identify the areas where they have a natural advantage, and they hone in on that. In other words, you don't have to change who you are. You have to become more of who you are. Find those areas in which your personality is naturally primed to over-deliver, to be exceptional. You don't have to be great at everything, but you do have to be exceptional in some way. And when you know the way that you're naturally exceptional, then you can just build all your communication around that so that when people communicate with you, they feel that they're getting huge value and that you're over-delivering and you're bringing something to the party that they couldn't get anywhere else. And this is critical in order to break through in any kind of an environment that's distracted and crowded and commoditized.
Yeah, I like that. It seems like there's a lot of wins in that because it's easier for you. You're not having to try to get better at something you really don't like and you're not really good at. You should focus on those areas where you're good, and it benefits people as well. As a matter of fact, kind of touching on that, over here on page 75, I saw something you like that I thought was really good, and it kind of hit home for me, where you say, you will never rise to your greatest potential by being all things to all people. And that's particularly tough for solopreneurs, for entrepreneurs, people doing so much. We think, well, I got to do all these things. I got to be the salesperson, the producer. I've got to be the bookkeeper. I've got to wash the windows, etc. But you're saying, no, 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 no. Don't try to be everything to everybody. We know that in theory. Tell me a little bit more about how we need to deal with those issues that go in our mind when we're an entrepreneur, a solopreneur, or even operating in a large company and trying to do everything ourselves.
If you try to be all things to all people, you'll end up being nothing to anyone. You have to stand for a specific difference. And here's what I mean by that. I spent the first half of my career writing advertisements as an advertising creative director for clients like BMW, Nike, Mini Cooper. And what I found is that successful brands have three things in common. First of all, they don't try to focus on being better. They try to focus on being different. So instead of focusing on strengths, focus on differences. What are those seemingly insignificant ways that you can contribute something that not everybody else can? It could be that you're naturally hyper-detailed, or that you're great at building teams, or that you have a way of engaging people and get them talking. There are certain qualities within you that are already built into you, that if you can just hone in on those and find a way to apply those throughout your entire career and your business, then you're going to be much more successful. But these differences don't need to be big. In fact, they can be very subtle. But once you find that difference, you want to own that difference. And so when you go inside the book, here I'm gonna strip just like you did.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, that's fine. We can take that off so we get down to real serious brass tacks today.
Free. When you inside the cover of the book, I described that there are these different personality types. You don't have to read this whole thing. You don't have to remember all of this. But there are certain adjectives that are associated with who you are. So, for example, if who you are is naturally clear-cut, accurate, and meticulous, like the detective personality, you're naturally going to add value by being incredibly precise. Spreadsheets, details, lists, making lists of lists, making sure nothing falls through the cracks, seeing everything in advance, building the framework, building the structure, building the timeline. On the other hand, for some people, that's not how they would add value, and it would be exhausting for them to try to work like that. I, for example, am the catalyst. Catalyst is primary passion, secondary innovation. The three adjectives associated with the catalyst are out of the box, social, and energizing. That means I'm going to naturally be at my best to contribute, to get in the flow, to get in the zone with my clients, with my friends, with my customers, when I can be social, energizing, and out of the box. So it would not be good for me to build a career, a project, a meeting, any kind of an expectation that who I'm going to be is clear-cut, accurate, and meticulous. Because if I have to be that, in other words, if somebody expects me to be that, I'm going to have a competitive disadvantage. I'm going to be exhausted. And this is what happens, especially as entrepreneurs or people working on teams. We try to masquerade that we have certain abilities that we really don't have. And that takes our time away. It sucks all of our energy and our focus. It's demoralizing. We end up disappointing people. But if we can identify what are the areas that we have a natural advantage, those ways in which we are uniquely suited to over-deliver, whether it's details or whether it's being out of the box, or any of the other personality archetypes, it gives you a very clear roadmap for why people should listen to you, take action on what you say, and follow you.
Yes, that makes sense, because it seems like when you're building that team, you're going to have different personality types, and sometimes that leads to conflict. Like, wow, I thought at first, wow, everyone should do it my way because, of course, I'm doing it the right way. Well, wrong thinking, Terry. Instead, find out these are my specialty, these are the specialty of someone else, and bring that team around you. How do you go about choosing that team, say in the beginning, to be able to select the right people so that they fit the different needs that you have within your own organization?
There's a recipe. There's a recipe to a high-performing team. It depends on the outcome that you want to achieve, but I outline it at the end of part 2. I describe, if your personality is this, the people you need to surround yourself with are this. For now, I'll summarize it, so I'll give you some key points that you can start applying. First of all, when you hire or choose a partner, do not seek to replicate yourself. Seek instead to optimize yourself. What the biggest problem that many people have is that when they hire, they choose the person with whom they feel a chemistry or that they click with in the interview, and so they end up replicating themselves. I have a primary passion personality. I love talking to other passion personalities, but the problem is that when I talk to other passion personalities, high five, woo, yeah, nothing ever actually gets done because we're not detail oriented. Instead, figure out where do you have an advantage, where do you have a disadvantage, and then how do you hire to compensate for those disadvantages so that you can stop focusing on those and start doing more of what you're already doing right. The second thing is to understand the great teams are not built on similarities. Great teams are built on differences. So that if you imagine a weightlifter who goes into the gym and he's all buff and he only works out his upper body and he doesn't work out his lower body, what's going to happen? He's going to be a little disproportionate, right?
Yep,
it's going to
exactly.
get that whole chicken look. Well, this is what we do on teams is we start to replicate the same type of personality over and over again, and then our teams are lopsided and we have massive disadvantages. Like, for example, when we went in and worked with a Fortune 100 life insurance company, the problem they had was they were not able to innovate often enough. They were losing younger employees and they weren't attracting new ones. And what we found in our research is that they totally over-indexed on qualities like, for example, the trust advantage. So they were very trusted, very consistent, methodical, step-by-step, routine, schedule, but they were not good at finding new solutions or changing in a rapidly evolving environment. On the other hand, we've tested startups, and we find that they're wildly creative, but there's nobody giving stability. So there's no healthcare plan, there's no office manager, the printer runs out of paper and they don't have a plan to replace it. So these are two different types of companies, but they both hired to replicate certain traits instead of optimizing and having a well-rounded recipe. And that's what I outlined in part 2. What is the recipe that you need in order to achieve the outcome that you're striving for?
Yes, I like that. And the way you do that, you lay it out very clearly in the book, very detailed. Matter of fact, those of you that are watching this, I would encourage you strongly to get this book and really devour it. Read this because it's going to help you in your personal life, in your business life, and it helps you to resolve a lot of those conflicts that you might have thought you had before, kind of like what I thought. Well, everyone should be like me. I'm doing it the right way. Well, wait a minute. There's other ways to do this, Sparky. So turn it around, listen to what they have to say, and this gives you a detailed strategy. It's not just you thinking, well, I'll have to make it up on my own. No, follow the tools that Sally lays out in here, and you'll like it. And Sally, I do want to turn over here on page 345. You said something about your little zone of genius. I love the way you said this, that your 0.1% is your distinct value. It describes the best of how the world sees you and how you are most likely to rise above and stand out. It's your own zone of genius. And you say down here, the good news is your built-in advantages hold real promise for the way you can become invaluable and irreplaceable to others. So important. Tell us about that and how we find that 0.1% that makes us different and where we add that real value and really make our lives what they should be.
I found this great piece of research in the New York Times that described that genetically, you and I and every other human being are 99.9% exactly the same. The only genetic difference that we have between us is 0.1%. Your personality is the same way. You're 99% the same as everybody else, but there's 0.1% of you that's this little zone of genius. Now, here's the bad news. The bad news is that if you spend a lot of time trying to fix or improve those parts of your personality that are not destined to be exceptional, you're going to be exhausted, demoralized. It's going to be incredibly difficult to move your business forward. You will not have a sense of energy and replenishment from your business. You'll be dragged down and struggling. On the other hand, here's the good news. You only have to focus on these seemingly minor details, this 0.1%. And that's what I do in the book, is I identify what is your 0.1% that makes you exceptional. So if you only have 5 minutes, imagine you pick up the book and you say, wow, this is a big book. Well, here's what to do in those first 5 minutes. First of all, do the online assessment. In the back of the book, there's a code here. Scratch off, take your assessment so you get your result. Then turn to your result. Read this, take these 5 adjectives as your marketing copy. Imagine I have literally written your marketing copy for you from my career as an advertising copywriter. Take this, cut and paste it, put it in your LinkedIn profile, put it in the About section of your website. Use it when you need to introduce yourself to a prospect. Then I want you to turn to page 365 and do what I call writing your anthem. Your anthem is a tagline for your personality. It's a ridiculously simple exercise that shows you those 2 or 3 words, like the same way that Nike has Just Do It or BMW has the Ultimate Driving Machine. You can have a tagline, and I'm going to help you write it. It only takes 5 minutes. You can do it right here on page 365 of the book. And that would only be 10 minutes, and you would come away with an incredible outcome, which is you'd have the adjectives to describe yourself in marketing copy, and you would have an anthem to guide you like a North Star in your career.
I like that, because if you have that anthem and you implement that in your life, you know what to do, and even more importantly, what not to do. To realize, okay,
knowing what not to do is so key, so that you don't end up spinning your wheels on an area where you're not going to be exceptional to begin with.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. And as I look at the other things that you say here so much, but I want to go over here to what you said. I thought just really put a wonderful cherry on top of a beautiful, delicious meal that we had. And it was in the afterword. You said the greatest gift you can give someone is to show them their own highest value. And I thought, wow, this has gone even beyond how the world sees you, but how you can help others. Tell us a little bit more about that, of helping them to show them their own highest value.
Terry, you know that feeling when you're talking to somebody that you love and you know they love you? When you're talking to somebody that has an incredibly high opinion of you, you know that feeling that gives you, that your words begin to flow, your ideas just come together, you feel confident, you feel relaxed, you feel authentic, you don't have to worry about how you're standing and what you're saying. You start to rise to your best, because when you know that your listener is hearing you at your best, when that audience sitting in front of you is loving what you're saying, when that client that you're presenting to is applauding for these ideas, when your Twitter stream lights up with retweets, when you feel like you're communicating at your best, you are at your best, and you know that feeling. It's the ultimate feeling. You feel in the flow, in the zone. You feel like you're ready to contribute. You're energized. It replenishes you like a wellspring. Well, when we can give somebody else this feeling, when you can help somebody else who's having a struggle in their career, a problem in a relationship, they've hit a roadblock in their company, or maybe even worse, maybe they have difficult life circumstances. Who is it that needs to feel more valuable? Is it a nonprofit? Is it a teenage girl who's not getting a good sense of herself? Is it a friend who's fallen on hard times in his career? Who needs to understand their value? Because the reality is, if they don't know their own value, nobody else will. If you don't know your own value, it's not your client's job to know your value. It's not your customer's job to know your value. It's your job to know your value. But once you know your value, I understand exactly how you add value. It becomes so easy to do it over and over again. It's effortless. It's like muscle memory, like riding a bike. You don't even have to try. So the struggle goes away, and you can just focus on being relaxed and calm and authentic and persuasive. And this is when your listeners are going to be most impressed, so that your work can live in the world in a way that people really hear, and your message gets action. Your words change decisions, change lives.
Exactly. And by changing lives, seems to me like that's the opposite of boring. You're able to excel and do those things you want. Sally, you've put together a marvelous book here. Again, look at the cover on this. Really good. It's How the World Sees You. This is a book here. I'm going to straighten that out there. It's How the World Sees You. And it is a fabulous book. I would encourage you that are watching this to look at it. Get the book. Part with a few coins. It's worth putting your time, money, and effort into studying this because it relates to how you are going to be perceived by the world and what you can do. If you've ever felt that frustration of, oh, gee, I just don't get along with this kind of person or that, or oh, this problem is there or that person, this is a book that can help. It's not just my opinion. Hey, again, New York Times and Wall Street Journal bestseller. Lots of people have said, yes, we want that one. They paid for it to see it, and she's getting a lot of good results. Sally Hogshead has put in the time, money, and effort to make this something that can really help you, and I encourage you, dear listener, dear viewer, to invest in yourself and get this. It can literally be life-changing. Sally Hogshead, thank you so much for putting the book together, and to your team, excellent team that helped put that together as well, and all that you have done, and thank you very much for joining us here today, Sally.
Terry, thank you so much. It's an honor.
I'm Terry Brock, and thank you, dear listener, for joining us today.